For most of its history, Formula One was a terrible business. Teams burned money. Sponsors came and went. Owners lost fortunes and walked away quietly. Even legendary names disappeared. So here's the strange part. Today, Formula One teams are selling for billions of dollars. Not millions, billions. Teams that were once considered financial disasters are now being treated like elite tech companies or professional sports franchises. And this didn't happen slowly. It happened almost overnight. So the real question isn't why people love F1. The real question is, why does the smartest money in the world suddenly want in? For decades, owning an F1 team was a rich man's hobby. You didn't buy a team to make money. You bought one because you loved racing, or because you had something to prove. Teams spent whatever it took to be fast. There was no cost cap, no revenue sharing, no financial safety net. If you failed, you collapsed. That's why teams like Lotus, Tyrrell, Brabham, Caterham, Manor simply vanished. Even Ferrari survived only because road cars subsidized racing losses. Back then, F1 teams weren't businesses. They were financial black holes with engines. In 2017, something quiet but historic happened. Liberty Media bought Formula One. And unlike previous owners, Liberty didn't care about tradition. They cared about structure. The first thing they realized was simple. Formula One was popular, but it was run like a private club instead of a modern sport. So they rebuilt the system. Not the racing, the economics. In 2021, Formula One introduced a cost cap. At first, teams hated it, because for the first time, you couldn't just spend your way to success. But investors loved it. Why? Because cost caps do one critical thing. They turn chaos into predictability. Suddenly, spending was controlled. Losses were limited. Long-term planning became possible. For the first time in F1 history, teams could budget like real companies. This alone changed everything. If you were bad, you earned nothing. If sponsors left, you collapsed. New F1 works differently. Today, teams get guaranteed prize money. Revenue is shared more evenly. Even last-place teams get paid. That means survival is no longer tied to winning. And investors love businesses that don't die when performance drops. This turned F1 teams from gambling chips into assets. Here's something most fans don't realize. F1 teams are no longer just race teams. They're franchises, like NFL teams, NBA teams, Premier League clubs. There are only 10 spots, and F1 has made it very clear. We don't want more teams. Scarcity creates value. You can't just start an F1 team anymore. You have to buy one. And when something is limited, global, and growing, prices explode. Then came Netflix. Drive to Survive didn't just bring fans. It brought new demographics. Younger viewers, American audiences, non-racing fans. F1 stopped being a niche European sport. It became entertainment. Suddenly, teams weren't just competing on track. They were building media brands, storylines, fan loyalty. And media brands are worth far more than race results. Old sponsors wanted logos. New sponsors want content, data, global reach. F1 delivers all three. Modern teams sell social impressions, hospitality experiences, tech partnerships. This diversified revenue. Teams are no longer dependent on one title sponsor. That stability adds valuation. Another reason valuations exploded. F1 teams learned to sell themselves as tech companies. They talk about data analysis, simulation, AI, advanced materials. Even if racing is still the core, perception matters. And investors pay more for a high-tech performance organization than a racing team that might crash. This isn't theory. Look at the numbers. Mercedes F1 valued over $3 billion. Red Bull Racing over $2.5 billion. Ferrari's F1 division is priceless inside the brand. Even midfield teams now cross $1 billion. 10 years ago, some of these teams were worth less than a single football club. Now, they rival entire sports leagues. Because timing matters. Right now, F1 sits at the intersection of global sports, media, technology, scarcity. And the biggest thing, growth is still happening. More races, more markets, more media rights. Investors don't buy peaks, they buy momentum. But here's the uncomfortable truth. These valuations assume cost caps stay, popularity continues, governance remains stable. If any of that breaks, F1 could return to being what it once was. A beautiful, expensive mess. F1 teams didn't suddenly become valuable because racing got better. They became valuable because the business finally made sense. Formula One didn't change its soul. It changed its rules. And once money realized this wasn't chaos anymore, it rushed in. Formula One teams are now billion-dollar assets. Not because they're fast, but because for the first time in history, they're designed to survive. And in business, survival is everything.